Good morning, Assalamu alaikum. I have a distinct pleasure of actually giving a report out of what we have accomplished as opposed to what we plan to do. Right? So that would be good. So the great thing that Professor Keys has already done for me is that I don't have to impress upon any one of you that semiconductor is a very important foundational technology. I should have taken his slides. The beautiful slide was the whole world rests on semiconductors. Thank you, Professor, really doing my job. So I don't have to convince you. Actually, what I would like to do is to give you a report out that we started this project about 6 months ago, and what we have been able to accomplish, and what would we like to do in the next 4.5, 5 years as National Semiconductor Hub. Before I go, I think it is very important to understand why we are so concerned about semiconductors. We are concerned about semiconductors because we think semiconductors is going down the path of nuclear technology, where it will become so important that the nations will refuse to share it. I'll say it again. The nations will refuse to share it because if you share semiconductor technology, you support everything that sits on top of the semiconductor technology, so you could leap forward using that technology. Now, if you want to hold back the other nations, why? Because you want to push your own nation, which is a very legitimate thing you might like to do. The way you could do that is to deny semiconductor technology or the latest semiconductor technology to the other countries. Is it true? What's happening now? It is being done to China. It is being done to other countries, and increasingly the world will divide. The clubs will be formed. There will be a clubs of haves and there will be a clubs of have-nots. The question is, where do we want to be in the kingdom? Of course, we should have the best relationship with every possible club, but we must have our own capability to do as many chips as we can. So this is our policy. That's what we are trying to do, that we want to attract companies from all over the world, from US, China, wherever these semiconductor companies come here. We want to make sure that we have trained talent so that they can hire those people, but also we want to bring people from all over the world here and work. We want to have incentive schemes for them. We want to have funding for them. But more importantly, we want to join these companies in their life cycle, which means not only we bring them here, give them people, help them with incentives and funding, but take them all the way to the exit. Because unless we make money doing semiconductor, it will just be a project that state has to keep on funding, which is not a way to build a scalable business, right? So, as I said, that in order to build any ecosystem, and I've been part of building few ecosystems around the world, it is just not sufficient to do one or the other. Like you see, people ask the question, why Silicon Valley cannot be duplicated? The reason for that is very simple. In Silicon Valley, we do all 5 things together. We attract companies, we train people, we give them incentives, we do funding, but more importantly, we take them to exits. There are companies who buy smaller companies, and because of that, the cycle continues. If you look at all the other things that have been done in India, in China, and elsewhere, what you find out, they either train, they try to fund, they try to give incentive, or they do something else, but they don't all 5 things together. So this is very important. If you're building a startup ecosystem, you have to do all 5 things together. It's not very easy to do. Why? Because 5 things are very diverse. Training people is one story. Attracting companies is a different story. Giving incentives is a different story. Working with the government, tough thing to do. Funding, working with VCs, another problem. Mergers, acquisitions, exits are yet another story. So this is the reason why it is so hard to build the ecosystems. It requires 5 different skill sets to bring all the people together to make an ecosystem work. And this is why I believe it is so difficult, and this is why people have failed all over the world to duplicate the success of Silicon Valley. Now, I'm not saying the people in Silicon Valley are very smart. It just so happened that we have the 5 systems together, and it was a very natural consequence of how California emerged. So here our goals are. Our goals is to bring 50 semiconductor companies to the kingdom in next 5 years by 2030. So when I presented this for the first time to Excellency Abdullah Swaha, he asked me, Dr. Sherwani, how can you bring 50? How many do we have now? I said 0. He says, okay, if you have 0, how do you get 50? So I told him that I myself have built 23 companies and there was no state behind me. So I'm assuming that if there is a state behind me, maybe we can do 50 in the next 5 years. I'll give you a report in a moment what we were able to achieve. I think you'll be very happy. But again, as I said, that's not sufficient. While we bring 50 companies, we'll have to have 5,000 trained engineers. How many we have in Kingdom today? You can guess, maybe 100. We have to have 25 world-class experts from the world who will mentor these companies. They have to be here physically. And then we have to provide funding. The total funding required would be around $3.2 billion for these 50 companies, right? Another problem with this funding is this funding cannot be government funding. Why? The reason is if the government funds all of it, the private sector will never be part of that. If the private sector is never part of that, this thing will never grow. So our goal is only 1/4 of the funding will come from the government sector. 3/4 of the funding has to come. 3/4 of the funding has to come from the private sector. Okay, so let me give you an update of what we have been able to achieve. So what we did was for our first cohort, what we decided that we will bring 5 companies for the first year, then 10 companies every year for the next 5 years. That's how we go to the 50 companies, right? So remember, our goal for the first year is to bring just 5 companies. And we primarily focused on United States, mainly because it was easier, not for any other reason, because I spent most of my life in Silicon Valley. So here's what happened. When we said we want to bring 5 companies, 64 companies applied to be part of that cohort number 1. Isn't that amazing? That randomly Kingdom says that we want to have 5 companies and 64 companies, and primarily the 64 companies are all US companies. Why US companies would like to come to Kingdom? Isn't that amazing? This is very strange, isn't it? I would have not guessed it. Here is the reason. In US, the IC industry, integrated circuit industry, jokingly, you know what we call it? IC industry, because it is mostly Indians and Chinese. IC, all right? Well, Indians can't come to US anymore. Why? H-1B immigration thing that is sweeping through the system. Indians will be very hard for Indians to come. Chinese cannot come there because we have made Chinese life hell as they go through our immigration. So both of them cannot come. So how will this IC industry survive? So the biggest issue we have in US today is the workforce is going to be a difficult situation. But this is not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the US semiconductor industry have tried to explain to our government that we will die if we do not have Chinese market. Why? China is half the semiconductor market. So if you don't sell to China, which is where we are going, then you have half the revenue. If you have half the revenue, then you have half the R&D. We can hardly make the chips that we can make with the full R&D. What will we do if we have half the R&D? Nothing. Death. This is a very serious problem. So this is the reason why US companies will try to move away from US and find neutral locations wherever they can go. Malaysia, Singapore. If we make them welcome here, they'll come here. So these are the 2 primary reasons, market and the human capital, why companies will move out of US. Well, some of our companies are also from China. Why? Why Chinese companies are becoming a technical refugees and leaving China? Slightly different reasons. China has no access to latest technology anymore because US has choked the latest technology. They cannot have 7 nanometer, maybe now even not 12 nanometer. So as this technology is not available, what will the Chinese company do? They will have to physically move out of China to access that technology. Same problem on the human capital. They have lots of Chinese engineers, But some of the very innovative engineers in semiconductor are Americans also, very important. And of course, Indians are not going to go to China, another problem. So again, this is a very interesting situation. Neutral countries like Saudi Arabia can hugely benefit from a situation that we sit here and we can literally, just Allah gave us oil. I think Allah can also give us an amazing semiconductor technology, but we'll still have to work very hard to make it happen, right? So this is what we have been able to get these companies. These are some statistics from the companies. So what we have been able to do is that we got 64 companies to apply. Remember, our goal was 5, right? But we were forced to accept 16. Why? Because they are that good. I cannot say no to a good company. So we have 16 companies in the cohort number 1 as compared to our goal of 5. All right? So this is very good. Now, all of these companies are raising their Series B, Series C money, so we will help them. So what we have done is that we have put together an incentive program. So when a company comes here, we give them, with the help of NDTP, we give them around $2 million for coming here and relocate a design center or bringing the company here. And then we work with them on getting the funding they need. So you can see the top 12 companies need around $200 million. So we are actually putting together a fund right now. The first fund we are putting together is a $500 million fund. But before I go to the fund, let me just give you a quick update on our what we are doing on training. Dr. Abid and his team is sitting right here. So we started the training at the same time. As I said, we need 5,000 engineers over the next 5 years. There are no 5,000 engineers here. So what will happen is we'll probably train 2,000 engineers here, and the 3,000 engineers will come from Egypt, Pakistan, Jordan, and the surrounding countries. So we have 2 efforts. One effort is to train people here, and one effort is to try to draw engineers from Egypt and Pakistan. So from training folks here, we had, amazingly, when we launched our first cohort, about 1,000 Saudi engineers applied for it, and we were able to get 60 plus candidates. They are training on 2nd floor right now. They are about 5th month in their training. 50% of them are women. We are very proud of that. This is amazing. And I think women are more hardworking than our men. This is not a racist statement. This is not a gender statement. This is just a statement of fact that what we have, the instructors have told me. All right. So I think this is our first cohort. We are going to launch our next cohort very, very quickly. We are also declaring Egypt and Pakistan as our spokes, which means we will be able to recruit people from Egypt and Pakistan. So that's how we intend to make this engineers happen. Oh. Same thing we are doing on experts. We have a goal of getting 5 experts per year. So we have been able to recruit 5 of them this year. So mashallah, that is going very well. Last update is on the funding. So we are establishing a fund called National Semiconductor Fund. The first fund, it is being registered right now by Apex, but the fund will be around $500 million. And the way the fund will work is out of the 200 million needed for the first 12 companies, we will only write a check for 50 million. The remaining 150 million will come from the private VCs. And we want to do that so that the private VCs should do more and more funding for our companies. They could be local VCs, and we have a consortium of 24 local VCs. And we'll also go out and find international VCs who should be interested in funding these companies. And the last thing, as I said earlier, is we have an incentive. This is the 5th pillar, right? You have to work on these 5 pillars together. This is the 5th pillar. And what we have done, we have worked with National Technology Development Program under MCIT. And what we have done is they've taken all their programs, combined that into a single program. And what it does is that it gives $2 million to any company that is coming here. And we give about $500,000 as soon as they land. As soon as they register the company, they hire the 5 engineers, we give them $500,000, and they have a couple of other milestones to reach, and then they can get the remaining $500,000. So as a result, in about a year, they can get the $2 million while they wait for the funding, hire their people, train their people. All right? So anyway, I wanted to give you this update. Hopefully, inshallah, I think this is our 6 months work, right? This is a 6, 7 months what we have done. Inshallah, we'll be able to do much better. We are done with our cohort 1. You're very welcome to visit us on the second floor. Thanks to Abu Fahad, we have a whole floor. And inshallah, in about 2 months, you'll see about 10 to 12 semiconductor companies, each with 5 to 10 engineers, doing 10, 12 different kind of chips that they will be designing. This is my hope. By July of this year, we'll tape out our first chip from Saudi Arabia. Thank you very much for your time.